How to work online. Intercultural communication in online work. If you are a freelancer or remote worker, there is a good chance you will cooperate with people from various countries and cultural backgrounds. Building a relationship with someone from a different culture is a challenging task, especially if you don't see each other regularly. In this unit, we will speak about effective intercultural communication. A person acts according to the values and norms of his or her culture. Another person holding a different worldview might interpret his or her behavior from an opposite standpoint. This situation creates misunderstandings and can lead to conflict, as it is the story with the scientist and the elephant. When the scientists were blindfolded and brought to the room with the elephant, each one was led to a different part of the elephant and asked to describe what was in front of them. As a result, each of the scientists saw completely different objects without having a common picture and proper communication between them, based only on their own perspective. The same thing happens in the online work when communicating with representatives from different cultures. Culture is often at the root of communication challenges. Our culture influences how we approach problems and how we participate in groups and in communities. When we participate in groups, we are often surprised at how differently people approach their work together. Our culture influences how we approach problems and how we participate in groups and in communities. When we participate in groups, we are often surprised at how differently people approach their work together. Cultural barriers are a result of living in an ever-shrinking world. Different cultures, whether they are in a social culture of a race or simply the work culture of a company, can hinder communication if two cultures clash. The roles individuals play in decision-making vary widely from culture to culture. For example, in the US, decisions are frequently delegated. In many Southern European and Latin American countries, strong value is placed on holding decision-making responsibilities oneself. Be aware that individuals' expectations about their role in shaping a decision may be influenced by their cultural frame. In some cultures, it is not appropriate to be frank about emotions, about the reasons behind a conflict or misunderstanding, or about personal information. Variation among cultures in attitudes towards disclosure is also something to consider before you conclude that you have an accurate reading of the views, experiences, and goals of the people with whom you are working. Notable differences occur among cultural groups when it comes to the ways people come to know things. European cultures tend to consider information acquired through cognitive means, such as counting and measuring, more valid than other ways of coming to know things. Compare that to African culture's preference for effective ways of knowing, including symbolic imagery and rhythm. These different approaches to knowing could affect ways of analyzing a problem or finding ways to resolve it. The way people communicate varies widely between and even within cultures. Across cultures, some words and phrases are used in different ways. For example, even in countries that share the English language, the meaning of yes varies from maybe I'll consider it to definitely so, with many shades in between. Some cultures view conflict as a positive thing, while others view it as something to be avoided. In many Eastern countries, open conflict is experienced as embarrassing or demeaning. As a rule, differences are best worked out quietly. From culture to culture, there are different ways that people move towards completing tasks. Asian and Hispanic cultures tend to attach more value to developing relationships at the beginning of a shared project and more emphasis on task completion towards the end as compared to Americans and Europeans. Europeans and Americans tend to focus immediately on the task in hand and let relationships develop as they work on the task. This does not mean that people from any one of these cultural backgrounds are more or less committed to accomplishing the task or value relationships more or less. It means that they may pursue them differently. Here are some tips which will help you to work together in an intercultural team. It is important to respect diversity. You should learn from generalizations about other cultures, but don't use those generalizations to stereotype oversimplify your ideas about another person. Working in intercultural teams, don't assume there's only one way to communicate. Your way of communication may differ from others. Make sure that you agree on a common way of communication. Avoid judgment and be open-minded when communicating with representatives of different cultures. It is important to look at the situation as an outsider. Develop an understanding from the other person's point of view. Investigate their culture's perception and take cultural and local differences into account. Use easily understandable language. Avoid using slang, idioms, and words that convey only the most specific meaning. Avoid assumptions and jokes that can be misunderstood. Visual support can also be helpful, so use symbols, diagrams, and pictures in communicating and explaining your ideas. Remember that cultural norms may not apply to the behavior of any particular individual. We are all shaped by many, many factors. Our ethnic background, our family, our education, our personalities, and are more complicated than any cultural norm could suggest. Check your interpretations if you are uncertain what is meant.